you as we load up. Live.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for Health Equity Week of Action, Day 5, our final day of Health Equity Week of Action. My friends, I am so deeply honored to share in this space with you all. Whether you've attended every day and every session of Health Equity Week of Action programming from the very top of our week to, if this is your first time entering into this space with us, I just want to name a couple of the themes that have emerged from this week. Over the past few days, we've reckoned with the world around us. We've named and clearly and precisely named the injustice that's taking place in the walls of our clinics and our schools, and we have named the roots of those injustices. And we've reckoned with the need for truth telling and for the purpose of liberation, and have circled back time and time again to the need for methods by which we can raise our voices with collective power, with precision, and with strategy and safety. And so, as a perfect thorough line to that kind of those emerging themes from Health Equity Week of Action, we are really fortunate to be joined now by leaders from the Committee of Interns and Residents, the largest House staff union in the United States, representing over 40,000 physicians and fellows who are organizing to transform graduate medical education, improve patient care, and safeguard access to healthcare. And today, our fabulous speakers are going to be articulating some of the fundamental tenets of organizing strategy, methods of power building, ways of collective bargaining, and how these skills, not only can reshape the material training conditions that interns and residents experience as they learn to become truly excellent future physicians, but how we can also use those skills to build momentum towards resistance, towards systems of complicity that pervade our profession. CIR is truly the embodiment of power with, not power over. They're a manifestation of the ways in which labor rights and the labor rights movement has always been interconnected to every other movement for justice. And if you've seen CIR on the news or in social media or even through word of mouth, you know that that's true because you've seen how CIR, through the power of organizing, has built that power to raise their voices on everything from the affronts to human dignity that are being taken out by ICE to ways in which our administration has sought to cut federal health care to bankroll billionaires. We're really lucky to be joined by their leadership. I'll introduce individually our amazing speakers today. First, we have Dr. Trina Van, a third-year pediatric resident at Children's National Hospital in DC. Dr. Van was born in Atlantic City, New Jersey, as the eldest daughter of Vietnamese refugees. She attended Cooper Medical School in Camden, New Jersey, where she was president of her Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council and advocated for her colleagues there, especially those who are underrepresented in medicine. And now she channels this work through her labor union, CIR SEIU, as a Mid-Atlantic regional vice president. And through the political arm of her union, she spoke personally with Bernie Sanders as part of her hospital's contract fights, leading to their second highest raise ever. And she also advocated for her patients by speaking to the DC City Council to protect healthcare access for undocumented immigrants in the city. Dr. Neff is a psychiatrist who organizes physicians with CIR and SEIU Doctors United. Clinically, he works part-time in a California prison and has a small therapy-focused solo practice. And I personally came to know Josh through his inspired work in bringing the praxis and method of organizing to the medical student consciousness through the Medical Students for Labor cause. He is a font of knowledge with regard to the labor rights movement and the process of building collective power. So we're very lucky to be joined by them today. And we should also note that Dr. Taylor Walker, the current president of CIR, was instrumental to shaping the vision for this session and unfortunately couldn't make it here today due to falling ill from the flu, but her vision pervades this beautiful session as well today. So With all of that out of the way, I would love to open the floor to our amazing speakers from CIR. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us and you're really good at introductions, Nikita. That was very nice. Trina, did you want to, I don't know, say anything before I jump into those slides?
No, you should go for it. You have so many good things to say.
I'll jump into slides and then get out of the way so Trina can say the even better things. So I'm going to share my screen. Everybody see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Give me a second to move things around on my screen so that I can see my slides and people. All right. So, framing this talk little slide portion of what we're doing here as the physician organizing movement, and I'll say at the outset what we're really trying to build is a movement that spans the entire career of physiciandom, from med school or even pre-meds potentially through med school, residency, if applicable, fellowship, and then throughout one's career as an attending, and build this movement for all kinds of reasons, which I'll get into. But anyways, that's why it's called the physician organizing movement. It's about all of us working together to build power to make our working conditions tolerable, sustainable, to be able to effectively work alongside our patients and the communities we serve to fix all the crazy broken stuff that is going on in our society, inside and outside, hospital and clinic walls. Let's see if I can, there we go. All right, so CIR, Committee of Interns and Residents, was founded in 1957 in New York City. It is the oldest and only nationwide union specifically for residents and fellows in the United States. It's affiliated with SEIU, so that's the Service Employees International Union since 1997. SEIU has 2 million members, which makes it the second largest union in the country. And of those 2 million, 1 million work in healthcare. The biggest union in the country is a teachers union. So this is the biggest concentration of healthcare workers in one union nationwide. CIR now has, I think the number might have shifted to 42. Is that right, Trina? Are we at 42 yet?
Close, I think.
Yeah. So anyways, it keeps going up. And especially when we had a friendly NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, under the prior administration, we were growing really fast. So we're almost at a third of all residents and fellows nationwide. There's 150,000 nationwide. So this makes us the largest union of physicians in U.S. history by far. By like the next biggest is like 6,000 or something. And this is up from 15,000 in 2017. So we were the fastest growing union local, meaning like CIR is the union local, SEIU is called an international. So we're the fastest growing like sub-union in the US for a number of years by far. And you can see here our growth curve. This is not a normal rate of growth for a union. There's almost like asymptotic thing going on here on this graph that I think doesn't require a lot of explanation. So what is a union? What do unions do? We all, depending on what kind of, the politics and the type of work and the home that you grew up in, you may or may not have any number of possible attitudes about unions. You see here on the image here is workers holding up each other to be able to meet on a level playing field with the boss, the employer, the hospital in the case of residents and fellows. But so fundamentally, union is organized power to make change. So that includes better working conditions. I'll talk more about some of what that includes. Better pay and benefits, which I'll be out like, I'm not in this because I care about doctors overall getting richer or more privileged than we already are. But in residency, we're often paid at a level. When I started intern year, I was in LA for my intern year, UCLA. I think I was going to be paid like $55,000 a year to live in West LA, which was just like, and pay my loans. And, it just was like really gonna maybe not even add up, living pretty frugally. But that year was the first year of that contract. And we went up from like 56 or 57,000 a year to like 77 or 78,000 a year, signing just at the point of signing that first union contract in November of my intern year. So it's about like, and I'm not someone, my privilege has been such that I don't have kids. I don't have to support my parents, but that's, not true for many of our members. So again, just being able to, the pay in residency is important, is what I'm saying. Legally binding contracts. I'll talk more about why that matters in a little bit. Or here's a bullet point I forgot about. You can't freeze or lower pay. You can't take away benefits. Enforcement of existing rules. So the ACGME has rules. OSHA, right, is like National Occupational Safety. I forget what the acronym is, but like if your employer is not enforcing or is not following these regulations, as an individual, you're in a tough spot to get those enforced. And this is about basic safety, like do people working in radiation intensive environments, which includes a number of different specialties, right? Cardiology, radiology, but do they have lead that fits them such that it is safe? This is not, we've had, this has come up, people having lead that doesn't fit them, a slate of miscarriages by people working in those environments that, we don't know for sure that that's why, but we have to wonder. Bargaining for the common good is a phrase to describe when unions, through their negotiating their contracts, win things that benefit the community, benefit, in our case, it would be patients. Teachers unions, especially in LA and Chicago in recent years, among others, have done some really amazing work to make sure that their students are well enough fed so that they can, because that is a working condition for teachers, right? Students being well enough fed to be able to learn. For us, these things also really intersect. If our patients are being saddled with medical debt from the procedures or tests that we order, then, that creates moral distress for us, as well as we are here to help our patients, not to be involved in bankrupting them. And oftentimes our employers aren't giving people the financial assistance that they're entitled to, and then, going after them with shady practices to, whatever, taking them to court, selling their medical debt to like debt collectors. Anyway, so that's just one example of a way that we at CIR, we're currently trying to bargain for the common good by fighting medical debt practices that aren't right in our contracts with our employers, alongside patients and communities. I think that's important, right? We're not saying we as the doctors come in and do things for the community on their behalf. This is in partnership. But bottom line is having a union means having a say. And think of it as we value democracy, like voting for representatives, but why is it that workplaces, it's so normalized for workplaces to be more or less authoritarian, right? The boss says, the hospital says, your program director says something, and then we just have to sort of accept that as is, rather than, we as workers, as doctors, having a chance to have a seat at the table and determine the way things are. So maybe the last thing I'll say about here is I wish it'd be nice if we lived in a world where we could just trust our hospital admins and other people with power to create healthcare the way we think it ought to be. But as you all know, that's not the world we actually live in, unfortunately. So the only way, no one's going to do this for us. We gotta organize through unions and other kinds of entities to make change. I don't want to spend too much time on this slide, but just to illustrate a few points about very concrete wins, just using, I did my residency at UCSF, as well as medical school. So, but anyway, so that's the example I'm familiar with. But what you see here is from 2008 to 2018, it's about 2% per year raises, right? The different years are the different colored lines because you get a pay bump every year of residency. And what you see here, and the 2% is just determined by the hospital unilaterally. They get to decide. And what you see here is a sharp increase up, especially in the first year of that first contract, and then in the second contract again. where, you know, you can sort of take that bottom line for PGY1s and kind of extrapolate out with your eyes where it would have been for PGY1s by 2024 and where it actually ended up. And you're looking at a difference of a fair amount of, you know, a number of thousands of dollars. And it's even bigger for the higher PGYs slightly. But the important thing to say here also is that during COVID, pay was frozen. So it's not that 2% per year isn't something you can take for granted. We would have flattened off and all non-unionized workers got flattened off. But because we have a contract, it continued to increase as we negotiated. A few things I'm just going to pull out to focus on here. Parental leave. It was 2 weeks of paid parental leave before unionizing. It's now 8. That's not good enough. But think about the different, you know, imagine having a C-section and going back to work 10 days later. Or having to dip deeply into all of your vacation days, sick days, God forbid that you actually get sick, or your new kid gets sick or whatever. Orientation work, getting paid for the weeks of orientation that you show up for, fertility benefits, right? Many of us are in our potential years where we might have children, get pregnant. Or years where we want to preserve that ability to do that later, or we want that for our partners. So whereas we had 0, nothing at UCSF, and this actually was a UC-wide thing that got worked out, now $30,000 over the course of your employment as a trainee at UCSF or any other UC, $30,000 to spend on IVF, egg freezing, etc. And then due process is something that is easy to overlook. We all are like, we got into med school, whatever, because we're good at following the rules and we don't get into too much trouble, most of us, most of the time. But sometimes weird shit happens. And like sometimes someone, because of their race, because of some personality thing, who knows, gets like the program director or some attending like has it in for them. And, people's careers can be ruined by being unilaterally fired with no recourse by your program. And we now have due process, and this was something that we were able to do at a legislative level to win this, so that all UC residents and fellows there's a process. You can't be fired arbitrarily. They have to show why you were terminated, and there has to be good cause for it. So how does CIR work? Importantly, and this is something that I think is not widely appreciated by people who have not been in unions, or even by people who've been in unions that aren't practicing in good ways, which exists in the world. CIR is a democracy of its members. So that means resident fellows and fellows control it. Right now, Trina is a regional VP for the Mid-Atlantic region. I used to, when I was a member, before I became, so I'm now half-time staff, right? But back when I was a member, I ended up in that role for Northern California. But anyway, so we have, importantly, there's constitutions and bylaws that determine how CIR functions in every element of its functioning. But so representatives are elected at national, regional, and chapter levels. So this is just an example again from UCSF. So the people, I think all but one of them, or this was people voting for delegates, and many of them did end up getting to be delegates or alternate delegates. On the left is images of our convention, and you see people in all those rows voting on various amendments and resolutions about how CIR functions. On the right side, you have specifically the regional VPs from UCSF, Olivia and Marisol. And again, so these are delegates. The people in the circles are people who are elected about 1 per 100 members to represent their chapter, and regional VPs are elected about 1 per 1,000 members to serve on the National Executive Committee, which meets more regularly. And is, did I say this already? It's about 1 per 1,000 members. I think I did already say that. Cool. There's also CIR staff. Staff are not the union. The union is Trina. I used to be the union. Now I'm staff. Now I work for Trina. I work for her and her union. And I'm saying that not because Trina has an elected position, because I would say that for all 41 or 2,000 members, I work for them as a staff member, even though I used to be a member myself. Every chapter, so Trina's at Children's National, I was at UCSF. We have staff who are assigned to be organizers at that campus. They do all the things, residents, as you all know, work a lot of hours per week throughout residency. So the organizers are the people who have the capacity and the skill and the experience and whatever to make sure, get the information out, have conversations with people to figure out what their interests are, like people meaning members, set an agenda for the meeting, run the meeting, all these things that need to happen that we don't have time when we're in training to do. We also have teams with expertise that is necessary to function and win. So we have a legal team, communications team, research, negotiating, data. Keep in mind, we are going up against multi-million, or I don't know the numbers exactly, very well-funded hospital systems more often than not. Also some super broke public systems too. But much of the, time where you're going up against University of California Health, even though it's public, it's like they have all these millions of dollars. They hire anti-union like law firms to spread, basically lies. This is being recorded, so I won't say it's lies, but it's like really not correctly leading statements. So this is how this is how we have a chance and actually have been doing great and winning a lot. So the way that this works is you pay dues as a member. So that at CIR, it's set by the members. I think I have a, so yeah, it's set by the member. Click through this. The budget is democratically determined by members. You have, and so it's 1.6% of your salary, which I think depending on, exactly what different chapters, different hospitals, different programs have somewhat different rates or different salaries, so it depends, but it's like $4 or $5 a day. Like, it's like, and by the way, you're like making more than you would have been making by much more than that difference, So anyways, it's really not that big a deal. The cost benefit is like abundantly beneficial. And yeah, the first bullet point here that is important is this means unions are independent and they're kind of unique on, in our society as a place where there is a concentration of money and power that is not beholden to wealthy donors or donors at all, right? It's just the members' dues that fund everything, essentially. And again, there's no really equivalent to that anywhere else in our society. Importantly, you got to think of it though, it's like a gym membership, not a housekeeping service, we like to say sometimes. So meaning if you buy a gym membership, it doesn't do shit for you, right? You have to go use the gym membership. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything out of it. And that's the same thing with your union. It's not about, again, this is Trina's union. It's not my union. So like Trina's got to show up, tell me what is important, and talk to her peers to build the strength. And again, I'm going to get a little more into organizing in a couple of slides, but I can't do it for Trina. I can support Trina in making it happen. We have a committee on political education, which is essentially our political action committee. And it is, so dues do not fund any of this. It's not allowed. It's not how we do it. So members, many of our members opt to pay an additional $10 or more, usually 10 a month to fund COPE. And that makes it possible for us to have a political presence that has accomplished all kinds of things. You see here my former co-resident Paul talking to Nancy Pelosi. In this instant, he's really pressing her on why she doesn't support Medicare for all and like really twisting the screws. It was very great. You see Trina met Bernie Sanders, right? So we have another picture of Bernie at Vermont. But all these political connections we've built and all these bills we passed that benefit us, benefit our patients, are made possible by these extra contributions that our members voluntarily make to allow us to do this stuff. Trina, is there anything you want to add about COPE? Trina, by the way, sort of has built the COPE in the DC area, which anyways, Trina, what do you want to share?
Yeah. So for COPE, I think at first, even everything Josh is saying, like the benefits, definitely outweighed like the cost. And I think at first a lot of residents have a lot of hesitancy because you have your first job ever and you're like, oh, what do you mean you need to take money? Like, are we sure? And it has definitely been the best investment, similar to a gym membership. I absolutely love that analogy. I've never heard it before. And in our region, membership in DC is great, but it's such an advocacy focused city. And so many people, so many residents or I guess medical students match here in order to like be on the Hill. And so we have actually now some of the highest COPE membership in the union overall, just because there are a lot of people who are like ready to speak up, to go to the Hill, to take opportunities like meeting Bernie Sanders. And then even on Monday, we're having the opportunity to screen the mayoral candidates for DC, which is pretty cool, especially because it is the first time in like 15 years that we don't have an incumbent running. And so, and so Ron's giving us a really high bar for finding a good mayor. So I feel like COPE is also a place where we like have in DC community engagement. Like once a week for a couple months, we go hang out with some second graders and talk about like healthy life things and try to make sure they bring those things back home. And so it's pretty much anything you want to make of it. And so that's COPE for DC and the rest of them.
Yeah. Thank you, Trina. Totally agree with everything you said. And I'll mention, oh yeah, it's important to say also, we've been, oh man, lost the thought. Yeah, I mentioned the due process that we won earlier. That was through the UC residents got that through a legislative process made possible by COPE. The fertility benefits were partly made possible by COPE by building a connection with the lieutenant governor. So anyways, there's all these ways that oh, and also during COVID, UC residents were going to be cut out of a COVID bonus that all other healthcare workers were getting statewide because we had a presence on COPE. We were able to get ourselves uncut out from that, which again, so it like many times over directly paid for the like what you'd make, what you spend to be a COPE member. So a few important points. What sets unions apart from nonprofits, political parties, et cetera. I already mentioned this financial independence, democratically controlled. We also already talked about a theory of change that accounts for material realities and power. It sounds like this will resonate with some of what you all have been talking about in recent days. But right, to make change, you need power. You can't just ask nicely. You can't just make good arguments. You can't just marshal evidence. I think this has become clear to everybody in the last few years. But we have real power only when we organize to act collectively. Unless you're a billionaire, and honestly, like the billionaires are all super organized. That's part of what makes them effective, right? They all pool their billions to fund the worst possible things and that could possibly be funded. But so the rest of us have to act collectively. Building power as a labor union means you have to organize everyone at your workplace through connection and conversation about common, tangible interests and goals. This is not an affinity group. It can't just be like, cool, I already got, those of us who already agree about this cause are going to like come together and say it matters, which is important. I'm not trying to diminish that, but I am emphasizing the importance and value of this piece of labor unions. It's true of tenant unions as well. You have this sort of socially shaped thing that doesn't mean everybody agrees with you to begin with, but everyone has a common interest, and that can also really change people's consciousness to engage in it in a powerful way. Importantly, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a subsequent slide, it's not just briefly mobilizing people who already agree, not just making people turn out to know kings, though that matters and that's important, but it's not only that. And it's not only trying to make change from top down, lobbying, advocacy, trying to convince elites and already powerful people to do something a certain way. It's changing who has power by coming together as collectively. A strong labor movement is good for society as a whole, and there's all kinds of ways this is true. Countries with more powerful labor movements have greater economic and health equity, better education and health systems, et cetera. And this is true, in so many instances. Also, unions reduce racial and ethnic pay gaps, right? Because everyone's on the same contract. I believe this applies to gender as well. I'm almost certain it does. And there's studies that show it helps reduce racial resentment among white workers who are themselves in unions. So some of that last stuff comes from the Washington Center for Equitable Growth, which they have a website with a lot of cool stuff about this kind of thing. Here's just one graph. We're all, physicians, future physicians. We know that causality, and correlation are not the same thing. So we can't draw a clear causality causality from the correlation of these things. But it is interesting to note. So blue line, union membership rate going up as high as 35% in the late 40s, early 50s, dropping down to under 14% today, or in 2022. And then the red line is the percent of income controlled by the top 1%. It's wild to see that as of the 70s, that was down almost where it should be, right? It's like they're making like 2%, 1%, whatever. But it's, as unions have gotten weaker, the income share has steadily climbed. And I think so, again, interesting thing to behold. So the importance of organizing, just a few more points on this, and then slideshow will be done, and we can hear more from Trina and less from me. In order to win, we have to organize. So organizing is a disciplined, structured, deliberate approach to building collective power. It's a whole skill set that we don't get taught in medical school. I'm still learning it. It's like feels no less complex and difficult to do well than medicine. It's not the same as mobilize. I already said this, right? Turning out people occasionally without building a thing over time, or advocacy, top-down change driven by elites, experts. These are also important. As a union, we use these tools. We mobilize, we do advocacy, as we were talking about, but we also are building power through organizing. So this means you are building on existing social relationships and informal organic leaders within the workplace to form a clear structure in which every member is connected and involved. So for example, Trina's a third year at, well, Children's National is a weird example because you all are super engaged. So UCSF, there's 1,600 people, and now the University of California is bargaining as one statewide unit. All the University of California campuses are one thing, but let's just use, when I was there, you bargained as UCSF. So I was in psychiatry department, and the structure we were trying to build, and it's right? A third of our members are turning over every year because of the nature of training. But so you're trying to continuously build and rebuild a structure where every cohort, because that's the basic social unit of residency and fellowship, right? Is I knew the other psych people in my year better than anybody else at the whole hospital, right? So every cohort has a leader, right? That or at least a representative who's engaged and connects the average person in the cohort, or we call rank and file person in the cohort, to someone like Trina, who's involved in the national leadership structure. And the leadership ideally should be very clear. Every person knows how it works, where they fit into it, and how they can, average cohort member, whatever, can raise their concern about a workplace issue or whatever, and have that get up to Trina. And Trina can be, part of a strategic planning thing. And then that can get passed down to them, hey, we're going to do this action on this day. So we have communication going both directions through this structure. And the structure is tested and also built through a series of structure tests. So here's an escalation ladder this was from prior University of California campaigns. So you can see there's direct action tactics, communication tactics, and political tactics. So we're using all of these things in concert, and over time you're going up the ladder, and each time you go up the ladder you see how many people participate in this email action, and you track that and you say, okay, we got 70% participation from this from peds, but we only got 60% from radiology, so we got to build out our work on building our structure and our strength in the radiology department. And this is how over time you try and build so much strength that you could do something like strike, right? Which means everybody walks off the job, doesn't get paid during that time. It's a high stakes, non-trivial thing. And if you're trying to do that with hundreds or thousands of people, you really need to develop your structure so everybody knows what the heck is going on. Okay, shifting now to how can medical students be involved now and why should they be? So some of the things that can be done, and so I've been working, part of my role, and one of the people on the call, so part of my role One sentence at a time, Josh. All right. Part of my role has been trying to develop our organizing with medical students because, again, a third of our members turn over every year. But we know where we came from, right? We're coming from medical schools. So that's something I've been working to build out. And someone on the call is Karen Master, who has recently shifted over from being a regional director in the New York region to for existing chapters to we're now working together to build out and develop this movement, as well as, really, again, building the whole career physician organizing movement is what we're trying to do here. So why would you get involved as a medical student? Well, one thing is you may actually benefit from the campaigns happening now more than the current members. Like when I was a fourth year doing so much work to make this happen, like, the people who followed me benefited more from that contract than I did, right? And this is it's just continually paying it forward. But as a medical student, you're not even paying it forward. You're just paying it to yourself, but you are giving a boost to the campaign as it happens in the present. And again, we're also always trying to more and more fight with and for patients and communities. And, as medical students, I think you're equally invested as residents are in seeing that happen. That how you can support CR efforts is, so for example, one of the thing in that escalation, one thing is a unity break where we have like a big, basically, rally, like in the front steps of a hospital or whatever, and we try and turn out hundreds of people, and the more people turn out, the stronger the message that's sent to the administration. And so imagine like this happens at noon, for example, 12:15 on Monday. Well, if the hospital and the med school are in the same place, then you may have hundreds of medical students walking out, right, when the thing is happening. This is another thing. So supporting actions, we had University of Chicago members or medical students, as well as UCSF, Brown, University of Minnesota have all done sort of similar efforts. So they signed a letter, with a majority of their student body supporting what the residents were doing and thanking them for what they'd done. Also medical students can organize around issues affecting medical students now. It doesn't require a local CR chapter. In the interest of time, I'll skip the in examples and just say they've done some amazing work. Med students I've been working with in Indiana, there's no resident union there for now, but they've done really impactful organizing and advocacy and mobilizing to really directly benefit themselves and their patients. And you can also potentially address issues affecting medical students directly. Various things, dealing with ICE in hospitals, stuff like that. So many potential benefits to being involved, be part of building the most promising movement and moment that we may experience. I mean, the more we all put into it now, the more likely it is this will keep going. But this is like, there's no brighter spot in social movement wise right now. There's a little maybe grandiose to say, but I think, you can say that we're it like this, and I'm including you all as part of this. Physicians getting organized. Build a network of like-minded folks across California. Sorry, this is from an old slide where we're developing our California chapter of this. But network, it applies just across the country. Build skills applicable in many settings. Once you know how to organize, as I'm sure you all have heard over this week, you can apply in so many places. And I'm being a little bit coy or cheeky here, but what this won't do is it won't pad a resume, and we have to like sort of untrain ourselves to be so focused on building our careers and individual accolades, right? That's how you get to where we got. It's cool, whatever, but now it's time to, start unlearning that over our careers. And it won't gratify your narcissism. It's nice to see your name at the top of an article. And I'm a psychiatrist. We all have narcissistic parts of ourselves that can be healthy. It obviously can also be unhealthy. But I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? Like, this is like, you're doing quiet, unglamorous work in the background, having all these conversations that nobody ever knows you had except for the person you had it with. But that's how the union gets built. That's how power gets built on a collective scale. And so I think it's a good spiritual practice for those of us who have done too much resume padding over the course of our lives so far. Medical Students for Labor is what we've been kind of calling this. This was come up with by the med students I've been working with, the logo and the name. So CRR and Med Students for Labor, we've been providing mentorship and training and organizing skills for folks motivated to build this movement. We had the pleasure of Nikita joining us in a training that we all participated in a couple months ago. So we're really looking for people who will consistently show up, do the work, and follow through. Organizing is kind of a sexy thing to talk about, but we need people who are really consistent, show up, and everyone's busy. This means whatever, showing up for an hour a month here and there, whatever, but consistent, doing what you say you're going to do, etc. So to get involved, you can email medstudentsforlabor@gmail.com and CC me, just because sometimes more than others, that email account is being monitored. So I'll nudge my med student comrades that that we're getting emails if you CC me. So that is the end of the slides. I'm going to stop sharing the screen if folks have had a chance to write this down. If you want to, I apologize for running a bit longer than I planned to. So now we get to hear more from Trina.
What an amazing presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, so I know I had a couple of, questions to get us started and allow the discussion to continue, moving along, but I also want to freely open the chat and, raise your hand and unmute yourself if you have questions from, this is a really lucky and fortunate opportunity to get insight and advice from two well-seasoned expert organizers. So if you have an inquiry, if you have something that's on your mind, this is a good place to get that insight and that expertise. I'll start us off with a question while people are thinking through what they may want to ask. I think a good kind of something I would love to know more about was, a moment in your training or in your professional development kind of experience, whether that started in medical school or in your intern year or residency, when you realized that collective organizing was essential to the material change you wanted to see for yourselves, for your colleagues, and for your future patients.
Well, thank you, Josh, for giving the best intro and explanation of everything. People are asking me how they can join COPE. And thank you, Nikita, for the question. So I've been reflecting a lot on I've started all of this work with the organizing brigade, the first and only, and hopefully not only forever, organizing brigade that Josh had created, and learned a lot about organizing principles, skills I hadn't learned before about power mapping. So you're trying to figure out who holds the power in a specific decision and who do you need to talk to before then. It's like asking your dad if you can go to the mall because he knows that he has more leverage over your mom or whatever, that's power mapping. We've been power mapping our whole lives. But how do we use it to actually make a change? And so anyway, I only started this stuff a year and a half ago or something. But I've been reflecting on how I've been doing it longer than that. And so the thing that really stuck with me recently was there's two things. One is when I was in my gap year as a medical assistant at a dermatology office. I remember they were telling us oh, you guys aren't allowed to share your salaries to each other. I was that feels weird, but I don't know anything, right? Come to find out that the receptionists are making $17 an hour, and the medical assistants who have all finished their college degrees are making $15 an hour, and we're the ones also helping perform dermatologic surgeries, patient care, sending prescriptions. And sometimes I went to help make receptionist calls. So little did I know that I was supposed to be being paid more for that. And so I could see that was kind of a first glimpse moment of oh, we're purposely being siloed to not talk about this so that we cannot like come together and say, hey, this is messed up. We should at least all be paid the same. And so there was that aspect. And then also, it was a tough year where I had a couple of deaths in my family and had to take some time off. And our contract said that we had 3 days of bereavement that were paid. And I was being told that I couldn't get it paid because it wasn't technically part of my contract. And I was the worst splinter ever and just kept pushing until I finally got bereavement pay. And I think without, I asked, like, does no one ever have a death, you know? And my supervisor had said, like, nobody's like bothered to ask for this bereavement pay. And I think as medical students, many people have not had their first job yet. And so you don't, I only learned about bereavement pay because my uncle said he was getting bereavement pay. And then I looked into it. And so, like, we are at a loss of power because we don't have the knowledge that people in other jobs do. And without talking about it out loud, you don't realize that that's something you should be asking when you apply for a new job or even to residency. Like, knowing your bereavement pay policy is important, and like your sick policy and things like that. So I think those are two moments where I really realized, like, this was just for like my small little job, and then for future patients, like, that just like explodes even more. But I've already rambled enough, so I don't know if you have anything to add, Josh.
I'll try to be brief because, again, you all have heard enough from me. I was really involved. So I was in the UC Berkeley, UCSF during medical program. I got to do a master's, kind of added a year to med school at Berkeley. And then I did a gap year to like build on that, the work I'd done there. And so all the work I was doing was around developing structural competency curricula, because I felt like I just sort of happened to get exposed to how to think about things structurally, like, why are patients sick? It's not just like their biology or their like bad individual choices, like, right? I think I don't need you. I know I'm speaking to people who understand things this way already. But so I did all this development of curricula and publishing around. And by the way, if you ever want to do like a presentation that really tries to like illustrate for an audience who's not used to thinking that way, how like structures influence health, you can look up my name and structural competency. And there's all the curriculum materials are like open access through MedEd portal, which is a kind of cool publication and resource. But anyways, so I did all that, and that felt like maybe as impactful of publishing. I was being cheeky about publishing before, and I felt like, well, this is, trying to change how medical education functions and change how healthcare providers think to be more structural is about as good, as impactful as we could be, and yet it still felt so insufficient without, unless that knowledge is being taken. Sure, like, let's interact with our patients in a way that accounts for the structural things influencing them, and that does matter. But also, like, structural problems require collective solutions, and so, that became clear to me as a medical student as I was working on that stuff. And then yeah, just again, I arrived in intern year and I was like, shit, this is like, the math doesn't work out, right? If I were younger, I'd say math doesn't math. Anyways, or maybe, anyways, I'm gonna stop embarrassing myself, or try. So anyway, just seeing the power of that, so quickly, of like, wow, we just got to a place where I can afford to pay my loans and my rent and food and whatever. So yeah, anyways, that's the end of me answering your question.
Thank you so much for those answers. And it's still, the invitation is completely open for anyone to raise their hands or to drop something in the chat. But some things that you mentioned and shared, Dr. Van, from your own personal experiences for having to advocate for yourself, I think something that is really, I think, important to highlight is the fact that physicians are becoming, losing more and more autonomy over our profession. Increasingly, we don't own our capital, we're employees. And so, another, unique facet of being a physician is that we've not necessarily had a lot of work experience coming into this field. And so you're putting, we're increasing this structure in which physicians are all employees, but we don't know how to advocate for our labor rights. And so I mean, I think that's where unions really, really do come in. And that was something that I noticed from your point. And then Dr. Neff, from your kind of answer, I think the conversation around structural competency is so important now more than ever, given the LCME's attempts to erase that language from their accreditation standards. And so, like, in a world in which we can't rely on our accreditation bodies, it sounds to me that, like, collective organizing and power building is the only form of recourse we have, the only form of recourse to shift who has power over the medical education that students receive.
One way to talk about it is nobody's going to come and do this for us, right? There's no parent who comes in or whatever, no external body who comes in and saves us. Medicine, healthcare is going to keep getting worse. Things are going to keep getting worse for patients, for society, unless we have to make it happen together collectively.
Beautifully well spoken. Well, the invitation remains open, so please raise your hand. Please unmute yourself. This is a small, intimate kind of gathering, and amazing. Perfect.
Oh my God, this is the session I've been waiting for years and years and years and years and years. Just this is it. This is it right here. Hi, everybody. It's such an honor to be with CIR in this space, and to have you all be really leading us out of this week of deep consideration of the very relationships between the structured reality of our present moment and the impact on people, both in the delivery of care and in the reception of care, and who gets it and who doesn't, and so on and so forth. I have actually just in the last year celebrated my 25th medical school reunion, and it was the first that I attended with my core group of friends. By the end of that weekend, they were calling me Kami Kuchi because they kept complaining about their work conditions and their general dissatisfaction with, with their contracts. And of course, they're all making, I think to your early point, Josh, they're all making in excess of $500,000 a year. So it is not a matter of compensation. It's a matter of the conditions under which physicians and all healthcare providers are expected to work in a system that fundamentally prioritizes profit efficiency and is governed by neoliberalism. And the corporatization and the consolidation of healthcare, and now the invasion of private equity into the entire system, is just going to fuck us over more and more and more and more. And I'm Gen X, but I work for AMSA and have worked for AMSA for over a decade. And so it's really interesting to compare my cohort in medicine to the current who are in medical school. And it's the only hope I have, frankly, because my friends do not and cannot see themselves as laborers. It is just too much of an insult to them. They still identify in their mind space as capitalists. And I'm like, you are paid $500,000 a year, but that doesn't make you a capitalist. You are not the owner of the means of your own production. So one of the things that I think a lot about in relation to the role that I have in AMSA is how do we engage the intergenerational cohort of people who are in medicine, in the House of Medicine, everybody from pre-med, and I'm so glad you named that, Josh, from pre-med all the way to those that have been in the profession for decades. How do we engage in political education that raises our consciousness of ourselves as laborers in the reality that we live, not the fantasy and mythology of medicine?
Amen. I mean, yeah, we're trying to. Part of the answer is we work together, right? You know, AMSA, CIR, Med Students for Labor. Something I should have said that needs to be added to the slide deck is we now have Doctors United is an effort to organize attending. So CIR and Doctors Council, which is an attending union, but much smaller than CIR is currently, working together to organize more and more attending physicians. I think the cohort issue you bring up, Jeff, is an interesting challenge as to how this will go. And like you said, as things deteriorate more and more, we're getting more people who are more willing to entertain this idea and to see things differently. But yeah, one of the ways we've sometimes been talking about it is Karen and I and other folks at CIR is how do we build something that's equal but opposite to the Federalist Society and the legal profession, where it's like they have a presence on every law school campus, and the people who get involved, it's a primary source of belonging, identity. For them, it's a career path to make lots of money and be a horrible person, but they're cultivating the worst tendencies of their politically confused, legal people, law students, I guess we call them. And how can we do the same? Everybody's here, right? Almost everybody goes into medicine to help people. So to your point, Jeff, how do we do the political education so that people understand that if you want to help people, you got to be a good clinician. And that's a really great foundation to do other kinds of social movement work, but it's not enough. And so how do we teach organizing, and also build a movement that, doctors who think this way, we all find each other in little moments here and there. Doctors for Bernie, Palestine activism in New York, Doctors for Zoran, but then the energy dissipates in between and we're not proactively developing a vision and building, right? So how do we sustain organization and organize ourselves so that we can, yes, go out and respond to the things that need response, but also be building our capacity to do that and having a positive program that we're working towards over time as well. So again, I think the bottom line is we partner together, AMSA, CIR, all the, SNAP, LMSA, NMSA, on and on and on. There's so many of us who already agree with each other, and we need to work together to really build out this vision or something like it. I talk too much again. You should talk more, Trina.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's
John.
better when you do it.
You have so much knowledge, and it was a big question. I had to think about it. I also feel like I have been. It's been sitting deeper with me that medical students and pre-medical students are all unpaid labor. Y'all are all part of the labor movement. You're just not paid, and then the doctors, the attendings who are, we are I'm part of this underpaid labor, and then there is the paid labor of attendings, but we're all suffering from the same kind of moral injury, and so there's I think a book or a podcast about how maybe someone who works in an Amazon factory is suffering from this moral injury of I'm contributing to this really horrible capitalist system, but I also need to be here. And I think as doctors or medical students, we are in the face of every patient. And when it's horrible when I walk into the emergency department and somebody walks in and they're and so Dad, can you give me your credit card for this $300 copay? And I'm gosh, this is not how healthcare should work. And the only person that they can see and blame is us. And it is unfortunately not the CEO whose salary is not capped 99.9% of the time. And so, sometimes someone had told me once, like, it's unethical for doctors to strike, but in reality, it's unethical for someone to profit off of patients and caring employees. And so I feel like the biggest thing that I can think of to answer your question though, Jeff, is like that is the difference between mobilizing and organizing. Is like we started with this underpaid labor, and Josh and Karen are spearheading this movement towards our unpaid labor. And then we have friends, also from UCSF, who are focused on this paid labor. And it really like boils down to this like organizing ourselves into delegating to the people who can rally people together towards like behind like one shared movement. Because I can tell you tons of times that I was like, oh, I brought lots of people together and we did a thing. And if you like read my speaker bio, that includes like a Guinness World Record event. Cool. I feel so bad about it though, because I didn't actually make it mean anything past that day. So I think that is the biggest question, and that's why Josh and I are here.
And I did maybe want to, since Karen is also here and part of the, I just wanted to, give Karen a chance to say hi and add any 2 cents, if that's okay, Nikita. I know we're running over.
We'd love to hear from Karen for just a moment, and then we'll just like sit with all of this as we move into our next session. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Karen Master. As Josh said, I just started working on CIR's med student programming with him, but I've been at CIR for over 13 years, working with members in our New York region, which was why I was involved in our members' endorsement for Zoran. So, on the staff side, it is such a great honor to be able to work with members like Trina and, alumni like Josh. And I'm really excited to be in this role. It's been so inspirational being here with all of you tonight and hearing this through their eyes. It makes me really excited to jump into this work and, figure out how much more we can do together to build on everything that they're laying out here tonight and on the energy that I'm seeing from all of you tonight, which I just appreciate and resonate with so much.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's such a pleasure to have you here. We will make sure that all of our students are, just as they're connected to Dr. Neff, they're connected to you as well. And truly, from the bottom of our hearts here at AMSA, thank you so much, Josh and Trina and Karen, for your perspective, for the North Star that you guys present in terms of how we can move towards collective liberation in medicine, how we can materially change things for ourselves and for others. You you absolutely represent a way for us to translate our ideals and our values to the change that we desperately need to see in this world. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to gratefully turn the mic over to Danya to get us settled for our next transition in this evening. But thank you again so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Nikita, and thank you so much, Josh, Trina, Karen. It is so exciting, honestly. Like, I'm feeling so energized and so excited. And we did have a question in the chat. So Armand, I see that beautiful question. If others have them, send your reflections over and we'll make sure that we get them into your lovely hands. We appreciate you so much.
Thanks for having us. So good to be here.
Get ready to hear from us a lot.
Looking forward to working with you.
Yes.
Okay.
Us too. Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, friends. We'll see you soon. Okay, my dears, let's take a moment. As always, breathe in that beautiful work that we just saw, those reflections that can help to mobilize and energize us. Take a second, grab your water, get your stretching in, and let's get ready for our second session, which I'm so excited to introduce you to. I'm going to stop the recording and the stream here as we prepare for our lovely Jill Bryson. Nikita, wonderful job as well. Thank you, dear, for facilitating that.